Oh, it is good to be back in Pennsylvania. So let me say, on behalf of myself and the first, second gentleman of the United States, my husband, Doug Emhoff, thank you for the warm welcome. And let me just say, it's good to be here with all of the friends, all of the leaders who are here. I want to thank former Governor Ed Rendell, Senator Bob Casey, who we will re-elect this November, Senator John Fetterman, Mayor Sherelle Parker, and Chairman Jamie Harrison. And it is so good to be here with your incredible Governor, Josh Shapiro. And I will say, Josh is a dear, dear friend and an extraordinary leader. He and I have been spending a lot of time together over the years. And I told Josh, look, I am so invested in our friendship in doing this together, because together with Josh Shapiro, we will win Pennsylvania. We will win Pennsylvania. And I thank you, Josh. I thank you. So Philadelphia, I launched my campaign for the President of the United States a mere 2 weeks ago. And it's been a bit of a whirlwind. And just last night, the delegates to the Democratic National Convention finished voting. And so I stand before you today to proudly announce I am now officially the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. And so now we got some work to do. We need to move to the general election and win that. And to all the friends, listen, we also need to level set. We are the underdogs in this race. But we have the momentum, and I know exactly what we are up against. Now, many of you know, before I was elected vice president or elected a United States senator, I was an elected attorney general, and before that, elected district attorney. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. So in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who scammed consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, Trump's type. Let me say, hold on. This campaign, our campaign, is not just a fight against Donald Trump. Our campaign, this campaign, is a fight for the future. It's a fight for the future. In Pennsylvania, we fight for a future with affordable housing, affordable health care, affordable child care, paid leave. We fight for a future where we build a broad-based economy, where every American has the opportunity to own a home, to start a business, and to build wealth. We fight for a future where we bring down prices that are still too high and lower the cost of living for America's families, so that they have a chance not just to get by, but to get ahead. We fight for a future where we defend our most fundamental freedoms. The freedom to vote. The freedom to be safe from gun violence. The freedom to love who you love openly and with pride. Freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body, not having her government tell her what to do. So, I love you too. So here's the thing. Since the day that I announced my candidacy, I set out to find a partner who can help build this brighter future. A leader who will help unite our nation and move us forward. A fighter for the middle class. A patriot who believes, as I do, in the extraordinary promise of America. A promise of freedom, opportunity, and justice, not just for some, but for all. So, Pennsylvania, I'm here today because I found such a leader. To those who know him best, Tim is more than a governor. To his wife, Gwen, he is a husband. To his kids, Hope and Gus, he is a dad. To his fellow veterans, he is Sergeant Major Walz. To the people of southern Minnesota, for 12 years, he was congressman. To his former high school students, he was Mr. Walz. And to his former high school football players, he was Coach. And in 91 days, nation will know Coach Walz by another name, Vice President of the United States. So America, for some folks, they're just getting to know Coach Walz's story. And I'll tell you, he is the proud product of a middle-class family in rural Nebraska. He is a veteran who served our nation in uniform for more than 2 decades as a member of the Army National Guard, and he went to college on the GI Bill. He is someone who, long before he entered politics, worked as a teacher. When Coach Walz and his wife Gwen moved from his native Nebraska to Minnesota nearly 30 years ago, they both took jobs at the local high school. Coach Walz taught social studies, Gwen taught English. After school, Tim was the linebackers coach for the football team. Where I've heard the stories about he had a knack for using the game of football to teach life lessons. He saw the potential in kids who sometimes didn't even see it in themselves. Under those Friday night lights, Coach Walz motivated his players to believe they could achieve anything. And together, they defied the odds, hear this out, going from a winless record to the school's first ever state championship. And I'll say and I'll add, Tim wasn't only a role model on the football field. Around that same time, Coach Walz was approached by a student in his social studies class. The young man was one of the first openly gay students at the school and was hoping to start a gay-straight alliance. At a time when acceptance was difficult to find for LGBTQ students, Tim knew the signal that it would send to have a football coach get involved. So he signed up to be the group's faculty advisor. And as students have said, he made the school a safe place for everybody. In the high school yearbook, the students voted Coach Walz the, quote, most inspiring faculty member. And as I think everyone here can see, Tim Walz was the kind of teacher and mentor that every child in America dreams of having, and that every kid deserves. The kind of coach, because he's the kind of person who makes people feel like they belong and then inspires them to dream big. and that's the kind of vice president he will be. And that's the kind of vice president America deserves. So it was Coach Walz's students who actually helped him decide to run for office. And he served 12 years in Congress, representing a purple district as he reached across the aisle to get things done. He was the highest ranking enlisted man to ever serve in the United States Congress. And the top Democrat on the Veterans Committee. And he was known as one of Capitol Hill's best marksmen, winning a bipartisan sharpshooting contest year after year. In Washington, Tim worked to raise the minimum wage, to protect the freedom of workers to join a union, and he cast one of the critical votes to pass the Affordable Care Act. Which, of course, gave health insurance to tens of millions of Americans. I'm going to tell you, when we win, Tim and I will continue to make the Affordable Care Act even stronger. He will win. Talk about what we're dealing with on the other side. So on that last topic, if Donald Trump gets the chance, he will end the Affordable Care Act and take us back to a time when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. You remember what that was like? Children with asthma, breast cancer survivors, grandparents with diabetes. Well, Governor Walz and I will not let that happen. Because we believe health care should be a right and not just a privilege for those who can afford it. As governor, Tim has continued to fight for working families. He secured paid leave for workers in Minnesota. And he refused, as governor, to allow any student in their public schools to go hungry. Breakfast and lunch free for every child. And Tim Walz and I, we agree about many things, including when our middle class is strong, America is strong. And strengthening the middle class will be my defining goal as I am President of the United States. So Pennsylvania, ours is a fight for the future of the middle class, and it is a fight for freedom. In this moment, we are witnessing a full-on attack against hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights. Take reproductive freedom. Now think about this. Donald Trump said he wants to punish women. And as a result of his actions, today in America, 1 out of 3 women live in a state with a Trump abortion ban. 1 out of 3. Some of these bans go back to the 1800s, even before women had a right to vote. Think about that. Well, Tim and I have a message for Trump and others who want to turn back the clock on our fundamental freedoms. We're not going back. And so let me say about Tim Walz, he has shown up to stand against these attacks long before he stood on the stage with me. After Roe was overturned, he was the first governor in the country to sign a new law that enshrined reproductive freedom as a fundamental right. And with Tim Walz by my side when I am President of the United States and we win majorities in the United States Congress, we will pass a bill to restore reproductive freedom, and I will proudly sign it into law. Tim Walz has also defended the sacred freedom to vote. As governor, he signed the most significant expansion of voting rights in Minnesota in over 50 years. And with Governor Walz's help, when I am president, we are going to finally pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. We're going to get it done. So Tim is a hunter and a gun owner who believes, as the majority of gun owners do, that we need reasonable gun safety laws in America. So as governor, he expanded background checks and increased penalties for illegal firearm sales. And together, when we win in November, we are finally going to pass universal background checks, red flag laws, and an assault weapons ban. Through his work, Tim, the way I think about it, he really does shine a light on a brighter future that we can build together. In his state, he has been a model chief executive, and with his experience, I'm telling you, Tim Walz will be ready on day one. In fact, when you compare his resume shall we, to Trump's running mate, well, some might say it's like a matchup between the varsity team and the JV squad. So, Pennsylvania, ultimately in this election, we each face a question. What kind of country do we want to live in? A country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law, or a country of chaos, fear, and hate? And here's the beauty of our democracy. We each have the power to answer that question. We each have the power to answer that question. The power is with the people. We love our country. And I believe it is the highest form of patriotism to fight for the ideals of our country. That is how we preserve the promise of America. And after all, you know, the promise of America is what makes it possible for two middle-class kids, one a daughter of Oakland, California, who was raised by a working mother, the other a son of the Nebraska plains who grew up working on a farm. It's the promise of America, because only in America is it possible for them together to make it all the way to the White House. And so Coach Walz and I may hail from different corners of our great country, but our values are the same. And we both believe in lifting people up, not knocking them down. He and I, we both know the vast majority of people in our country have so much more in common than what separates them. When we look at folks, we see in our fellow Americans neighbors, not enemies. Not enemies. And so my promise to you is this. Our campaign will reach out to everyone, from red states to blue states, from the heartland to the coast, in rural, urban, suburban, and tribal communities. We are running a campaign on behalf of all Americans. And when elected, we will govern on behalf of all Americans. And so, with Tim Walz by my side, and with all of you at our side, let us fight for the promise of our future. And with that, I ask Pennsylvania, are you ready to make your voices heard? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. And now, President of the United States, Tim Walz.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you, Philadelphia. Thank you, Madam Vice President, for the trust you put in me, but maybe more so, thank you for bringing back the joy. I'm thrilled to be on this journey with you and Doug, this incredible journey. And Pennsylvania, I know you know this, but my God, what a treasure you have in Josh Shapiro. Holy hell, can this guy bring the fire? He can bring the fire. This is a visionary leader. Also, I have to tell you, everybody in America knows when you need a bridge fixed, call that guy. And I think sometimes we forget, and you see people a little one-dimensional, but seeing a guy who cares so deeply about his family, a man with compassion, vision, and I'll have to tell you this, I know this from experience, there is no one you would rather go to a Springsteen concert in Jersey with than him. Than that guy. Roots. And I can't wait for all of you and America to get to know my incredible wife, Gwen, a 29-year public school educator. Don't ever underestimate teachers. And our two beautiful kids, Hope and Gus. I couldn't be prouder to be on this ticket and to help Vice President Harris become what we all know is very, very good for us to think about. Next President of the United States of America. From her first day as a prosecutor, as a district attorney, Attorney General of the great state of California, a United States Senator, and Vice President of the United States. Vice President Harris has fought on the side of the American people. She took on the predators, she took on the fraudsters, she took down the transnational gangs, she stood up against powerful corporate interests, and she never hesitated to reach across the aisle if it meant improving people's lives. And I want all of you to hold this, and don't ever underestimate the power of this. She does it all with a sense of joy. I know a little something about that commitment to people. I was born in West Point, Nebraska. I lived in Butte, a small town of 400, where community was a way of life. Growing up, I spent the summers working on the family farm. My mom and dad taught us, show generosity towards your neighbors and work for a common good. My dad served in the Army during the Korean War. And with his encouragement, at 17, I joined the Army National Guard. For 24 years, I proudly wore the uniform of this nation. The National Guard gave me purpose. It gave me the strength of a shared commitment to something greater than ourselves. And just as it did for my dad and millions of others, the GI Bill gave me a shot at a college education. My dad was a teacher. My brothers and sisters and I followed in their footsteps. 3 out of 4 of us married teachers. What we do. For nearly 20 years, I had the privilege of teaching high school social studies and coaching football. Including winning that state championship. So thank you. Don't ever close the yearbook. Don't ever. But it was my students. They encouraged me to run for office. They saw in me what I was hoping to instill in them, a commitment of common good, a belief that one person can make a difference. So in 2006, I took a leap and I ran for Congress. And because high school teachers are super optimistic, I was running in a district that had 1 Democrat since 1892. Well, my neighbors graced me with an opportunity to represent them in the United States House of Representatives. I'm proud of the work we did there together. I worked across the aisle on veterans issues, on agriculture, and on ways to grow rural economies. I learned the art of compromise without compromising my values. And now, as governor of the great state of Minnesota, I bring those experiences to bear in tackling the challenges that are facing our great state. Minnesota's strength comes from our values, our commitment to working together, to seeing past our differences, to always being willing to lend a helping hand. Those are the same values I learned on the family farm and tried to instill in my students. I took it to Congress and to the state capitol, and now Vice President Harris and I are running to take those very values to the White House. Now, Donald Trump sees the world a little differently than us. First of all, he doesn't know the first thing about service. He doesn't have time for it because he's too busy serving himself. Again and again and again, Trump weakens our economy to strengthen his own hand. He mocks our laws. He sows chaos and division. And that's to say nothing of his record as president. He froze in the face of the COVID crisis. He drove our economy into the ground. And make no mistake, violent crime was up under Donald Trump. That's not even counting the crimes he committed. You know, some of us are, some of us in here are old enough to remember. I see you down there. I see those old white guys. Some of us are old enough to remember when it was Republicans who were talking about freedom. It turns out now what they meant was the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and their personal choices that they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business. These guys are after my heart chanting, mind your own damn business. That feels good, so thank you. Look, that includes IVF, and this gets personal for me and my family. When my wife and I decided to have children, we spent years going through infertility treatments. And I remember praying every night for a call for good news. The pit in my stomach when the phone rang, and the agony when we heard that the treatments hadn't worked. So it wasn't by chance that when we welcomed our daughter into the world, we named her Hope. When Vice President and I talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make your own health care decisions. And for our children to be free to go to school without worrying they'll be shot dead in their classrooms. By the way, as you heard, I was one of the best shots in Congress, but in Minnesota, we believe in the Second Amendment, but we also believe in common sense gun violence laws. Vice President Harris' idea of freedom is a ticket for education to be that ticket to the middle class, not crippling debt. Air that's clean, water that's pure, communities that are safe. A place where we settle our political differences not through violence, but with our votes. And that's what this election's about. What direction will this country go in? He's not going back. Well, Donald Trump would damn sure take us backwards. Let's be clear about that. And don't believe him when he plays dumb. He knows exactly what Project 2025 will do to restrict our freedoms. To rig the economy to help the super rich. If Trump gets a chance to return, he's going to pick up exactly where he left off 4 years ago. Only this time, it will be much, much worse. Raising costs on middle-class family. He will repeal the Affordable Care Act, no doubt about it. He'll gut Social Security and Medicare. And when somebody tells you they believe him. He said he'd ban abortion across this country, and he'll do it, whether or not Congress is there or not. Donald Trump's not fighting for you or your family. He never sat at that kitchen table like the one I grew up at, wondering how we were going to pay the bills. He sat at his country club up in Mar-a-Lago, wondering how he can cut taxes for his rich friends. And I got to tell you, his running mate shares his dangerous and backward agenda for this country. J.D. Vance literally wrote the foreword for the architect of the Project 2025 agenda. Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, J.D. studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is. And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, you see what I did there? Look. I got to tell you, pointing out just an observation of mine that I made. I just have to say it. You know it, you feel it. These guys are creepy, and yes, just weird as hell. That's what you see. That's what you see. So you know what's out there, so say it with me. We aren't going back. We aren't going back. We are not going back. So we got 91 days. My God, that's easy. We'll sleep when we're dead. Over those next 91 days and every day in the White House, I'll have Vice President Harris's back. Every single day. And we'll have yours. You know how this works. We can't do it alone. We need you, each and every one of you. Go over to KamalaHarris.com, get on board, because we need you. Freedom to make our own choices. This leader, this compassionate, careful, joyous leader believes in each and every one of you. My God, you came here tonight to sit at the very top because you love this country and you're not going back. She believes in the opportunity for every single person to join the middle class. She believes in the promise of America. We just got to fight. We just got to fight. Because as soon-to-be President Harris says, when we fight, we win. Thank you, Philadelphia. Thank you, Vice President. God bless America.
You just heard Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor. You just heard Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris and her running mates, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, speak in Philadelphia in front of a very energized crowd. They have officially been certified as the Democratic Party's nominees for president and vice president. Harris said, "We are the underdogs in this race, and we know exactly what we're up against." She said this campaign is a fight for the future, and Tim Walz will be ready on day one. Now, Walz said Donald Trump doesn't know the first thing about service because he's too busy serving himself. Republicans were quick to criticize the Democratic ticket, calling it liberal, radical, extremists. Let me bring in the panel. Spectrum News national political reporter Taylor Popolars, political anchors Karina Kling and Curtis Jackson. But let me start on the ground in Philadelphia. That's where we find our Cassie Simeon. Cassie, this is just the first of many campaign events for the duo in the coming days. What is the plan to introduce Walz to the American people?
Well, let me first Sharon, with the electric crowd here tonight. This arena can fit about 10,000 people, and it was hard to find a seat tonight. I think you could hear the crowd still roaring behind me as the vice president and her new running mate make their way off the stage. This was just the first stop in what is going to be a very busy week for both Tim Walz and Kamala Harris as they make stops throughout the swing states that they will be needing to convince voters to vote for their new Democratic ticket if they're going to win in November. Those stops include Wisconsin, Detroit, Arizona, and Nevada, just to name a few. And that's just 91 days we're talking about. Election day is 91 days from now. And we just heard Tim Walz say, you know, we'll sleep when we're dead. 91 days is easy. He is fired up, and as Kamala Harris said, he will be ready on day one. And we really started to see that energy from the crowd, the excitement of seeing these two together for the very first time. And Sharon, it is so loud in here, I could barely hear you ask the question. This crowd is just really revved up to see these two in Philadelphia tonight.
Yes, definitely very energized indeed. So, Taylor, it's been a big fundraising day for this new Democratic ticket, raising millions from grassroots supporters alone. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, Sharon, the Harris-Walz campaign told us just a few moments ago that since Governor Walz was announced as Kamala's VP pick, or Harris's VP pick, the campaign has brought in over $20 million in grassroots donations. So that means donations in amounts of $200 or less. And it's the latest example in the 2 weeks, and it feels so much longer than that, but in the last 2 weeks, since President Biden bowed out of this race and passed the torch on to Harris, her campaign has now raised upwards of $230, if not $240 million in that time. So it's a clear indication that the Democratic base kind of feels rejuvenated after Biden decided to step out of the race, and that in addition to the big crowds that you were just hearing Cassie talk about, they're having a lot of money to kind of put where their mouth is, and they're going to be spending all of that moving forward, especially as they introduce the governor to the country as this new VP pick.
Absolutely. And Curtis, picking Governor Walz underscores the Harris campaign's focus on the blue wall states of the Midwest. Can he help deliver these states that appear to be slipping away from the Democrats?
It certainly appears that the campaign is hoping so, that his appeal, especially among those rural voters, will be enough to shore up those states. Keep in mind, right now there's enough energy behind the Harris campaign that they feel fairly confident in attracting their traditional Democratic base, the black and other minority voters, those voters that are 18 to 49. They are seeing a surge in the registration of voters, and also a re-energizing, especially among young voters. The key is going to be not necessarily winning over rural voters, but at least keeping it competitive in those rural areas. That's kind of the strategy that someone like Walz gives you. He can make the case in rural America. Maybe you don't win there, but you attract enough of attention there, you attract enough votes to keep it very competitive, and then that way you carry the entire state. By chance, I got a chance to talk to a guy named Chris Gibbs. He works as the chair of the Democratic Party in Shelby County, Ohio. It's a small rural area. He's been working kind of one-man band there, trying to make sure that they can get enough of traction among Democratic voters there in Ohio. And what he told me today was very interesting, is that he is seeing a new level of enthusiasm among the people in the rural parts of the state that he's been working with. If you consider that a microcosm of what could happen in Michigan with Kent County, what could happen in Pennsylvania with Bucks County, and what could happen in some of the rural areas and exurbs around Wisconsin, yeah, there's an opportunity there to shore up that wall big time.
Yeah, and Taylor, as I mentioned, Republicans were quick to pounce on Walz. What is the line of attack here?
So it's interesting. The Trump-Vance campaign obviously had some prepackaged material because Tim Walz was rumored to be one of the finalists in the last few days. So immediately they released a video going after some of the things Walz has done as governor in Minnesota, having to do with gender identity. They've also talked a lot about him just being very far left-leaning. Now, it's worth mentioning and pointing out, and Walz talked about this in his introduction speech, he served in Congress for 12 years representing a largely rural district in southern Minnesota that that has been represented by a Republican years before him and years after he left. And he talked about how he learned during those dozen years he had to compromise, and he had to, compromise to make deals but not compromise on his values. That stands in stark contrast with what we've heard from former President Trump and his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance today. Vance actually held an event in Philadelphia just a couple of hours before this as sort of counter-programming, and he claimed that Walz was a far-left liberal and was going to try to be a San Francisco wannabe like Kamala Harris. Now, Walz actually went on a New York Times podcast, I think a week or two ago, and talked about how he had just made his first ever trip to San Francisco. And Vance, for his part, actually lived in San Francisco for about 4 years when he was a venture capitalist before he entered elected office. So it's an example, I'm a little in the weeds, but it's an example that the Trump and Vance campaign is really trying out new material as they figure out how to run against Kamala Harris and now her new running mate, Tim Walz, because they, for months, were planning to run against President Joe Biden and had all this material against him. But right now there's an effort from Trump and Vance to really say that Harris and Walz are now representing the far left side of the party, even if their track records don't necessarily reflect that. It's really interesting to track.
Yeah, and Karina, Walz is a folksy man, but so far he has proven his ability to play the traditional vice presidential role of attack dog. In fact, Walz criticized Trump and Vance for being weird in an interview last month, and then Harris started using it too.
Yeah, I think before we came into our coverage, you could even hear the crowd chanting, "That's just weird." So it's something that has really taken social media and particularly younger voters who really made that movement with "that's just weird." And I think, if there was any question about whether he would be a reliable attack dog for this ticket, a lot of that was put aside after his speech today. He is going on the attack against Donald Trump. He is going to go on the attack against J.D. Vance, and we're going to see that into the future and in this campaign. And I think, one thing that a Democratic congressman said, that playing off of that, it's just weird, he can bring this party and the Democratic ticket and talk about we are the ticket of normalcy. So I think just trying to define what they have in the contrast, as Taylor was kind of mentioning, and just his background, the layout. A lot of this, we're still in kind of this honeymoon period of the Harris and now Walz ticket. How long that honeymoon will last, and how each candidate and how each side is able to define themselves moving forward is going to be really interesting to watch as they continue to find out more about each other, and as America continues to find out more about Tim Walz as well as the others moving into November.
Yeah, we're very quickly learning a lot about him. So, Cassie, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was also a final contender for the VP role. He was at this rally and a favorite to win the nod. He said in a very dynamic speech, he said, "I am going to be working my tail off to make sure Harris and Walz are the next leaders of America." I have to ask, were Republicans more afraid of Shapiro, who could have potentially helped deliver the all-important state of Pennsylvania?
I think there was definitely some concern from the Republican side of the aisle if Harris had gone with Shapiro as her running mate. He is also a prosecutor who has had a history of beating Trump in court when it comes to 2020 and his efforts to challenge the election results in Pennsylvania. But as we saw tonight, he is someone who is going to put the party over his own ambitions here. He's going to be out on the campaign trail for the Harris-Walz ticket. And this is an incredibly important state when it comes to winning the election. Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes. We saw in 2020 it was the state that delivered Biden the White House, and it could very well be the state that determines whether or not Harris or Trump are the next residents. But I do want to comment, he did have a standing ovation here at the Leocora Center in Philadelphia for multiple minutes as he walked on the stage, and both Harris and Walz gave him his flowers about what an incredible governor he has been for Pennsylvania. He will be a critical surrogate moving forward in this campaign, and we'll likely see him appear again with Harris and Walz in the coming weeks and months.
Sure. All right. So, Curtis, just a few weeks ago, the Republicans were as united as ever at the Republican National Convention. Democrats were in disarray at the time about President Biden's candidacy. Do Democrats appear to be lining up behind this team?
Definitely. There's a lot of momentum here when you consider just over the course of the past couple of weeks, what we saw after 1 week's time with the Harris campaign, tens of millions of dollars donated. But I think another data point here that shows how excited Democratic voters are. And remember, that was the main problem for Democrats when President Biden was at the top of the ticket. There just was no enthusiasm there. So another key data point there that they're seeing is the number of volunteers that have been signing up to work with this campaign. And that is not only a strength potentially for the Harris-Walz ticket, it also highlights a weakness right now for the Trump-Vance ticket, and that is the lack of a ground game. And by that, I mean a ground game that is organized by the party, not outsourced to other groups, as is the case right now with the Trump-Vance team. But the actual campaigns that are able to get offices, that are able to get volunteers on the ground, knocking on doors, especially in underserved areas, that could be key in determining the impact and the future of this election going forward right now. So you add to that the momentum that she's gaining from the attention of having a running mate, and all of this happening in a very compressed time period, too. So everyone's attention is focused on this. You suddenly have a very different race here than what we saw 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. Karina, I want to go back to you. So Harris said that we will restore reproductive freedom for women, and Walz was very adamant about it as well, talking about reproductive freedom and also IVF, saying that's very personal for him because his daughter Hope is a product of IVF. Talk more about that.
Yeah, and I think that that has been a #1 campaign issue for Biden and Harris, and moving forward for Harris and this ticket. And so bringing him on, and somebody who can, you know, as the first governor to sign, you know, abortion rights into law after Roe v. Wade was overturned, and moving forward now being that spokesperson on behalf of IVF as well. I think that's going to be something that he can really speak to. This is a campaign that will be focused a lot on abortion rights, and I think that it could be a message that will potentially move voters who could, if there are any still on the fence, or people that maybe just weren't going to get off the couch and go vote in November, and they're going to continue to hit this very hard. I will note, you know, on that being such a #1 issue for them, being here in the state of Texas, one thing that was not mentioned by either one of them was border security, and we know that that's been a political liability, excuse me, for the Biden-Harris ticket, and Harris has continued to be Republicans have pounced on her on that issue, and we're seeing that come out again and again on Walz as the layout and his announcement was made today. And so I think that's something that's going to be something that they're going to have to really work on in terms of the issue of border security moving forward, because it is and continues to be such a top issue across the country, but particularly a main message, if not the top message, of the Trump-Vance ticket.
All right, and Cassie, we have been talking about the importance of battleground states, but there's another important voting bloc, the youth vote. How have they been responding to this new ticket?
A ton of, you know, young voters here in the crowd today that seemed very energized by Governor Walz, you know, laughing at the jokes that really hit, specifically about Trump, you know, saying crime was up under Trump's presidency, not including the ones that he was convicted of. Got a bunch of laughs here. Online, they see him as a dad figure, as that Midwestern dad that's really relatable. He's really embraced Brat, you know, the Charlie XCX song that has been all over social media. He's also really embraced the weird, right? We've seen a shift in how the Harris campaign is talking about their opponents, following his lead on calling them creepy and weird. So I think young people, despite his age being 60 years old, are ready to embrace Walz as the potential next vice president as we look towards November.
Taylor, I want to go back to you. So Walz's military background is a key part to his resume. He enlisted at the age of 17 and served for 24 years in the Army National Guard. This could potentially sway maybe some undecided voters, especially veterans. Why is this important?
Well, any political campaign, especially on the national level, loves if they have somebody with military experience on the ticket because they can relate firsthand to the many veteran voters that exist across the country. It's a key voting bloc. It's, of course, usually a swaying older bloc that is often very involved in these elections. I think what will be really interesting if the two campaigns agree to a vice presidential debate is you will have Walz, who is this longtime Army National Guard veteran, go up against Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who is a veteran of the Marine Corps and also served overseas. And they're, a bit different in age. Vance is about just turned 40 and Walz is 60, but both of them can talk about serving their country, and Vance can talk about going overseas. So I think that could set up a really interesting contrast. But in so many ways, hearing Walz introduce himself, he really helps complement the Harris ticket. Harris comes with this prosecutorial background, who served in California, climbing the ladder from a regular prosecutor to a district attorney to the attorney general and then a senator. Walz is able to bring not only his military experience, but his background as a teacher and somebody who grew up in a small town of 400 people, and his experience as a football coach, in addition to being a congressman and now a governor. So I think it really sets up a fascinating contrast with Trump and Vance. The Trump campaign does not have a whole lot going on this week. Vance is going to be kind of following Harris and Walz as they go on the road, but Trump himself doesn't have any public events scheduled until a campaign rally on Friday in Montana. So it'll be really interesting in the coming days to see how this race shapes out. But these two VP candidates are going to really pose a fascinating contrast with each other.
Yeah, and Curtis, I want to bring you in. Taylor talked about this briefly here about him being a coach who is also a social studies teacher. He really took pride in being that coach. And Harris also mentioned how he was a leader in his own right with that, really teaching life skills to his players, coming from a school that wasn't winning any football games to actually winning the state. So talk more about that.
That's something that everyone can relate to. Everyone remembers that favorite teacher or coach who was so instrumental in their development. My favorite teachers were social studies teachers. Some of my favorite people that were very instrumental in my life were football coaches. So I'm not the only one that has that sort of experience, and that is the story, the narrative that he brings, is giving people an opportunity to use that memory as they get ready to make the decision on who they vote for.
All right, it's going to be very interesting. Many thanks to the entire panel. Taylor Populares, Karina Kling, Curtis Jackson, and Cassie Simeon. Thank you for your time today. And thank you at home for watching. I'm Sharon Tazwell. More news right now on Spectrum News.